Welcome to Bipolar Talks, the channel where we explore mental health topics in a mindful way, breaking them down into clear human conversations that help you understand not just the facts, but also how they feel in real life, so you can apply them to your own journey. Before we begin today's deep dive into mindful ways to deal with health anxiety and hypochondria, I'd like to pause and invite you to be part of our growing mindful community. If you feel this topic matters, please take a moment to like this episode, write a comment sharing your own experiences or reflections, subscribe to Bipolar Talks so you don't miss future episodes, and share this with a friend, family member, or anyone you feel could benefit from hearing it. Every time you interact with this channel, you help keep these important, compassionate conversations alive for more people who may be struggling silently. Have you ever caught yourself spiraling over a small physical symptom, wondering if it's something much worse? Let's explore why that happens together. Today we are mindfully unpacking a condition that can feel incredibly overwhelming and exhausting. Health anxiety, also known as hypochondria, which is the persistent fear of having or developing a serious illness, even when there is little or no medical evidence to support that fear. We will explore where this fear comes from, why it can be so difficult to shake, how it's different from regular anxiety, and most importantly, the mindful and practical steps you can take to start breaking free from it. This is not just about understanding the theory. It's about learning tools that you can actually use in everyday life, whether you are personally dealing with health anxiety or supporting someone who is. Doesn't it sound empowering to replace fear with understanding? Let's begin that process now. Defining health anxiety. Health anxiety, or hypochondria, is not simply worrying too much. It's a very specific pattern where ordinary body sensations or minor symptoms are interpreted as proof of a serious medical condition, even after medical tests and professional reassurance have shown that nothing dangerous is happening. For example, a normal headache after a long day might be interpreted not as stress or eye strain, but as a possible brain tumor, or a momentary chest flutter might be viewed as a sign of impending heart failure. What makes this especially draining is the way it fuels a constant cycle of checking, researching, and doubting, leaving the person mentally stuck in a state of high alert. Have you ever noticed how once your mind starts down that path, it's hard to let go, even when the doctor says you're fine? From hypochondria to somatic symptom disorder. In 2013, the term hypochondriasis was officially replaced in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. With somatic symptom disorder, the word somatic simply means related to the body, and the new name emphasizes that this is not about faking or imagining illness, but rather about a disproportionate focus on physical symptoms, and the belief that these symptoms must mean something serious, regardless of medical reassurance. The emotional distress is real, the symptoms are often real, but the interpretation of those symptoms is what becomes exaggerated and catastrophic. For today's discussion, I'll still use the older term hypochondria, because it's the word most people recognize. Isn't it interesting how changing the name can also change the way we see the condition? When anxiety creates symptoms, one of the most challenging things about hypochondria is that anxiety itself can produce genuine physical symptoms, making the fear feel even more believable. For example, someone who worries about having brain cancer might begin experiencing dizziness, balance problems, or headaches, not because of a tumor, but because their nervous system is in a heightened state of stress. These symptoms can appear suddenly, last for hours or days, and then disappear once the anxiety subsides, only to be replaced by a new set of symptoms tied to the next health fear. This constant shifting of focus keeps the mind on edge and reinforces the belief that the body is under threat. Have you ever had a symptom disappear the moment you stopped worrying about it? That's your mind-body connection at work. General anxiety versus hypochondria. It's important to understand how hypochondria differs from general anxiety. In general anxiety, physical reactions like a racing heart, sweaty palms, or an upset stomach often have a clear trigger, such as an upcoming presentation, an argument, or a stressful deadline. Once the trigger passes and the person understands the cause, the physical sensations are less alarming the next time they occur. But with hypochondria, each physical sensation is treated as new, unexplained, and potentially dangerous, regardless of whether a doctor has already said otherwise. The reassurance rarely lasts because the mind finds ways to question it, imagining rare diseases or undetected conditions that could still be lurking. Do you see how the brain, in this case, becomes almost like a detective, only it's looking for danger instead of truth? The conditioning loop. The persistence of health anxiety can be explained in part by something called conditioning, a learning process similar to Pavlov's famous dog experiments. In the same way a dog can learn to associate the sound of a bell with food, a person with hypochondria can learn to associate certain physical sensations with danger. For example, if you once experienced acid reflux during a stressful period, and then read an alarming online story about someone dying after chest discomfort, your brain can link those two things together. From then on, any chest burning, even if it's from spicy food, can trigger intense fear of a heart attack. Over time, the association becomes automatic and deeply ingrained. Isn't it fascinating, and a bit frustrating, how our brains can work against us in this way? How the cycle reinforces itself. Once that initial association between a body sensation and a feared illness has been formed, the cycle begins to feed on itself in a way that can feel almost impossible to break. The more you focus on a sensation, the more your brain amplifies it. And the more you research that sensation, the more evidence you find that seems to confirm your worst fears, often from unreliable or anecdotal sources online. This leads to increased body scanning, where you become hyper-aware of every heartbeat, every twitch, every change in breathing, as though you're constantly on guard for signs of disaster. Over time, this constant monitoring creates a kind of false alarm system in your mind and body, keeping you in a near-constant state of anxiety. Why loved ones struggle to reassure you. From the outside, this cycle can be deeply frustrating for friends and family who genuinely care about you. They may try to reassure you, reminding you that the doctor said everything was fine, or telling you that they've had similar harmless symptoms themselves. But for someone with hypochondria, these reassurances rarely stick, because the fear feels so real and so convincing in the moment. In fact, repeated reassurance from loved ones can sometimes backfire, because it reinforces the idea that your symptoms are important enough to keep checking on. This can lead to tension in relationships, as the person with health anxiety feels misunderstood, and their loved ones feel helpless. Treatment approaches. Medication and therapy. When it comes to treatment, medications such as serotonin-enhancing antidepressants, commonly known as SSRIs, can help by lowering the overall level of anxiety in your system, which in turn can make the thoughts and sensations feel less overwhelming. However, medication alone usually does not address the underlying patterns of thought and behavior that keep the cycle going. That's where cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, comes in. CBT is a structured, evidence-based approach that helps you identify distorted thinking patterns, challenge catastrophic interpretations, and change the behaviors, such as constant checking or researching, that reinforce your anxiety. Wouldn't it be powerful to not only feel calmer, but also retrain your mind so it no longer jumps to the worst-case scenario? CBT in action. The first step, medical clearance. The first step in using CBT for health anxiety is making sure that your symptoms are not coming from an actual untreated medical condition. This step is important because it allows you to focus on managing anxiety without constantly wondering if you're missing something serious. If you haven't had a medical evaluation yet, that should be your starting point. But it's equally important to recognize that even people who have had thorough checkups often still doubt the results, because in hypochondria, the fear is not removed by reassurance alone. This is why therapy is necessary, to address the way the mind interprets information. CBT in action, education and understanding. Once you have medical clearance, the next step is to learn the facts about the symptoms you're concerned about, from a qualified medical professional, not from random internet searches. This education is not about memorizing medical textbooks. It's about getting clear, specific explanations for why your symptoms do not indicate the illness you fear. For example, your doctor might explain that certain heart conditions would produce additional signs beyond the ones you have, or that your age and medical history make certain diseases extremely unlikely. Writing these explanations down and reviewing them regularly can help you build a mental library of reassuring facts to counter your anxiety-driven thoughts. CBT in action, thought restructuring. Another essential part of CBT is thought restructuring, which means identifying your automatic thoughts about your body and then challenging them. For instance, if you immediately think burning in my chest means my heart is failing, you and your therapist will work together to explore other, more likely explanations, such as acid reflux, muscle tension, or even the physical effects of anxiety itself. By repeatedly challenging catastrophic thoughts with more balanced possibilities, you begin to loosen the grip that these fears have on you. Over time, your brain learns to pause and consider multiple explanations, instead of jumping straight to the worst one. Addressing reinforcing behaviors. CBT also targets the behaviors that keep health anxiety alive. Things like constantly checking your pulse, scheduling multiple doctor visits for the same symptom, or repeatedly searching online for explanations. One effective method for this is called exposure response prevention, where you practice noticing a sensation without immediately reacting to it with checking or research. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, even unbearable, but with practice you learn that the discomfort eventually passes on its own, without needing to solve it. This helps retrain your brain to see sensations as harmless, rather than as urgent alarms. If therapy isn't accessible, not everyone has immediate access to a CBT-trained therapist, but you can still apply some of the same principles yourself. Start by making a list of your fears and the symptoms that trigger them. Take this list to your doctor and get clear, direct answers about why your symptoms are not signs of the illnesses you fear. Write these answers on index cards or in a notebook, and refer to them whenever the anxiety flares up. Combine this with physical distractions, activities that require movement and focus, like walking, gardening, or yoga, to shift your attention away from your internal body scanning. Breaking free from health anxiety takes consistent effort, self-compassion, and mindfulness. It's not about ignoring your health. It's about learning to respond to your body in a way that is informed, balanced, and not ruled by fear. The energy you currently spend on researching and worrying can be redirected into retraining your thoughts, calming your body, and living more fully in the present. Every small step you take toward responding differently to your symptoms is a victory worth acknowledging. Are you ready to take that first mindful step toward living without constant health fear? If today's mindful conversation on Bipolar Talks has resonated with you, I warmly encourage you to like this episode, leave a comment sharing your experiences or questions, subscribe to the channel so you never miss our future mindful discussions, and share this with anyone who might benefit from understanding health anxiety on a deeper level. Disclaimer: this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. It is not a substitute for professional diagnosis or treatment. Always seek the guidance of a qualified healthcare provider regarding any medical concerns you may have.